And leading that madness, of course, is the bloated Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC. They were blasted last night after it emerged almost 1,800 staff had a pay rise above 10% last year. Oh, yeah. The hikes averaged nearly £8,000, costing us, the taxpayer, £13.9 million. A Beeb spokesman said last night the BBC has cut a large number of support jobs and made significant savings. While there are strict rules around pay increases, it's only right that when people are promoted or take on extra responsibilities, it's reflected in their salary, as at any organisation. No, because in most organisations, the people who are giving out the salaries are also involved in turning the dollar and making the money, not the BBC. But anyway, that's just my view. Let's talk to Andrew Allison, Head of Campaigns at the Freedom Association. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Gaunty. How are you this afternoon?
I'm fabulous. Is this the bloated Broadcasting Corporation again?
The BBC just manages to shoot itself in the foot at every twist and turn of its existence. I mean, who would have believed it? I mean, 1,800 people. I can't believe that all of them have got some form of increased responsibility. I'm sure they've handed out quite a few generous pay rises. But in the meantime, what always gets me is that I'm friends with a lot of people in my local BBC station in Hull, BBC Radio at Humberside, and I know that they're being cut to the bone. I mean, they really are. They can't even afford to. Well, BBC local radio in general can't even afford to pay expenses. So if someone's expected into the studio and they're travelling by train or by bus, taxi, they can't even pay their expenses, and yet the BBC somehow manages to find this extra £13.9 million to give all these extra pay rises out.
Yeah, well, I'm a great supporter of BBC Local Radio. I think it's one thing that the BBC should be doing. I think that it should be very local, and it's something the market wouldn't provide. I think.
I agree. Yeah.
First to be, it's always the first to be cut to the bone. And as you rightly say, then there's all these middle managers, because it'd be very interesting to see the breakdown of where the money's actually gone. And I bet you it's, again, in the middle management. And then there was that example of two women today who set up BBC Wales Drama, and the amount of money they were given to do that. And one of them paid herself £800,000. I mean, these are outrageous stories when it is a period of austerity. Other people in the civil service and in the public sector have not had pay rises. Why is the BBC allowed to act differently to the rest of the public sector? It doesn't seem right to me.
Well, the BBC shouldn't be allowed to act differently to the rest of the public sector, but it always does, and it always seems to get away with it. It never seems to be seriously challenged. You can, if you want to, stop paying a licence fee, but of course, if you still watch live television or try to get into iPlayer, then they'll come after you. We know what the goons are like from Capita when they start knocking on people's doors. in fact, just hounding people for having the temerity of not having a TV licence. They assume that you're a criminal, and they just keep on getting away with it all the time. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they increase the license fee and then they give nice generous pay rises. And I would agree with you. It will be middle management that will get it, but meantime, other people are on 1% or something like that.
Sure. Also, as well, it's really interesting. They've spun a story today about Andrew Neil, who, by the way, I really rate. I think he's a fabulous current affairs presenter. He's obviously decided, or been asked, to give up Sunday politics. So he's given it up to get his weekends back. Let's just accept that he's given it up. He's done it for 5 odd years, right? They've spun that story in the papers today. Andrew Neil, the first big BBC star to take a wage cut. Well, he's not taking a wage cut. He's doing one less show a week. So, of course, he's going to get paid slightly less. But they're spinning it. And then they're going, oh, we've given the job to a woman. I don't know the merits of John Smith's daughter, whether she's great or not. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But, again, they're spinning it. That somehow they're getting on top of the gender pay gap and they're getting on top of high salaries. They must think we're stupid. Do you see what I mean?
Well, yeah. They
it's
must. Andrew Neil does, I think, over 180 live shows a year for the BBC. I mean, Andrew Neil really earns his money, and he's going to do one less show a month, and as you say, it's been spun. A week. Yeah, sorry, one less show a week, and it has been spun to say that he wants his weekends back and all the rest of it. And he is, he's in his 60s, Andrew, isn't he? And, maybe that's the case. But you're right. I mean, John Smith's daughter might be absolutely excellent, but she has got very big shoes to fill. And I think it's actually quite risky for the BBC because Andrew Neil has made the Sunday Politics what it is now. He was the first presenter of it after he changed from the politics show. So I think they're taking a big risk. But if she falls flat, well, I sincerely hope that she doesn't.
Yeah, so do I as well. So are you a slasher? Or are you a close down the whole bloody thing? I mean, the only thing I would probably save is, as I said earlier, local radio, but perhaps in a different form. But I certainly think Radio 1 and Radio 2 can be privatised. I even think, God help me, I think Radio 4 could be as well. I think there's enough wealthy people who will pay for that. And we're getting used now to paying for apps and micro-payments and all the rest of it. I don't think there's a need for a licence fee, and I don't think there's any need for the BBC as it is. So... what are you? Are you a slasher or a complete get rid of? Tell me where you are.
Well, I suppose I may be somewhere in the middle. I mean, I fundamentally agree with you. Radio 1 is a hugely successful radio station that could easily be privatised. Same with Radio 2. Radio 3, I still think there's a lot of wealthy people who listen to Radio 3 who probably pay for it. And the same absolutely goes for Radio 4. I mean, all the other stuff, I mean, EastEnders and various things like that. I mean, people are willing to pay for it. Of course they are. So there's no need for a license fee to fund that. What does concern me is the local output. I think he does provide a service, as you said earlier, that is not going to be provided by the market, certainly not in that in-depth way and the way that they cover local news. So I think there has to be a way of funding that. But you could say that a private BBC that's making quite a lot of money could afford to pay for that. Otherwise, it would probably end up falling back on the taxpayer. But yeah, I mean, is that a slasher or an abolitionist there? But I certainly think that the whole thing should be privatised, put under subscription, paid for by advertising, however they want to pay for it.
Okay. And is yours just a financial argument, or is yours also an argument politically as well? Because I just feel nowadays a lot of their reporters emote rather than report. I think they've been pretty shoddy in their reporting and very biased, actually, about Donald Trump and about Brexit. And I resent that personally. I resent. Whereas something like Andrew Neil, he'll give both sides a right rollicking, which is how it should be and how the BBC used to be. I mean, I'd compare people like John Cole, the great late John Cole, the political editor, I mean, with his lovely Irish accent, to Laura Cushenberg. I'm sorry, there's no comparison because she gives us her opinion. I don't want a bloody opinion. I want her to tell me the facts, and then I'm going to sit there and think, well, I think this about this. Or then I want them to bring on two guests with opposing views, and we'll make our mind up. I don't want BBC people telling me what to think. Is that right? Was that right?
Well, no, that's right. And you say the reason why I want to see the licence fee abolished is, well, there's a freedom argument from the Freedom Association. It's we're forced to pay for the BBC irrespective of whether we use it or not, and that simply isn't right. But I mean, the bias is there. I often find it's not necessarily in sort of direct bias that you hear. It tends to be sort of a mission, that they will sort of like have a particular argument and they're trying to frame it in one particular way. So they'll have three guests that are speaking in favour and sort of one who's against. I mean, I remember doing one for BBC Scotland discussing the licence fee. I was the only guest on there that wasn't doing a live interview. So I didn't have any right of reply to anybody else. And surprise, surprise, all the people who were doing the live interviews and wouldn't be able to talk about what I said were all in favour of the licence fee. So
it's the oldest trick in the book. That
it is, and they do that a lot. And certainly, on Brexit, on climate change and things like that. I mean, they want to ban Lord Lawson from going on. I mean, that's not impartial reporting of the news. It's very biased. And the BBC is a lot of people are very annoyed with the BBC about that, and rightly so. It shouldn't be using its power like that.
And to be fair, and I worked for them for 20-odd years, there's a lot of people within the BBC who don't want the BBC to be like that. And you do find that in local radio. A lot of people tear their hair out because they do try and give the balance. I mean, I think local radio is brilliant. I really do. And they do try to give the balance. And of course, they have a bias, but it's a bias to their local area because, like a local paper, they've got to support their city and their football team and the rest of it. Nothing wrong with that at all. And that's fine. It's on a national scale. We shouldn't have this bias. That's what I would say. Good talking to you. Sorry, go on, finish.
No, I was going to say, I entirely agree with you. I remember one regional BBC political editor telling me how uncomfortable he actually feels about that and how uncomfortable he feels about having to earn his salary out of forcing people to pay for a licence fee. So there are people like that in the BBC who are uncomfortable about lots of aspects.
Absolutely. Great talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Andrew Allison.